with all the changes and trying to get people working, you mentioned a couple of standard operating procedures that you're now doing, posting the signs, all those sorts of things. How are you dealing with some of those standard operating procedures, as well as really the communication factor? Because at the end of the day, it's all about employee confidence. It's all about customer confidence. If those two groups aren't confident that they can come and work with you in a way that's safe, they're not going to, and that's going to remain a problem for you for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. We have a task force that meets Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, going back to, I was in Mexico on vacation when they started dialing down little by little, and this became more and more real, not just a faint virus somewhere around the world. And we scheduled Monday, Wednesday, Friday with our HR team and a number of leaders, and 3 times a week seemed like it was going to be gobs too much. And boy, there's something to talk about every single time. Even this morning, preparing for the meeting, there.
And he went off. So we'll just jump into that. From a protocol perspective, you guys, Brian, you still there?
I'm still here.
All right, very good. The wonders of Zoom. So Brian or Dr. Schnurr, from a protocol perspective, what are some of the new protocols that would be beneficial to be looking at for employers to just be thinking of from today forward?
Brian, you want to tackle it, or you want me to?
Well, go ahead and give your. I always like to go last, Dr. Schnurr.
No problem. So, I think that, and I think Brian will touch on, from the minute you open the door, I think that, having, masks, antimicrobial cloth-based masks are important, and picking the right mask. I think that's going to ensure that the person wearing the mask is protecting other people from himself. So that mitigates some of the risk of the asymptomatic carriers that may be entering the workspace that maybe we potentially missed, protecting them. I think that, unfortunately, temperature screening at the door, only 30% of COVID positive patients have a fever. So I do know that we are doing temperature checks at the door. Do I think it's that effective? Probably not, but it is being done, and I think that's fine. I think that looking at different hand gel solutions, and I think Brian will touch on microstatic hand gels, which give a level of protection beyond instantaneous, so that someone is protected for over 6 hours. I think that's beneficial. So I think hand washing is beneficial. I think within the office operation, obviously, you need to reconfigure your office so you maintain social distancing, 6 feet. I think the high-risk individuals, you may want to distance even further than 6 feet, or put them in separate areas or separate rooms, giving them an extra level of protection. I think that, teaching, not shaking someone's hand, and trying to be more cognizant of not touching your face as much. I think putting posters and signs and educational material is also important throughout the office. So I think HR has a duty, maybe, online courses and reinforcements and meetings and constant reinforcement is also going to be important as well. And then obviously when someone gets sick, protocols in place for them to report that they're not feeling well, and then having and looking at all the different wearables to use within the office, and looking at different wearables that may help with contact tracing, and again, protecting the employee pool. Those are the types of protocols that I think you need to look at.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Schnurr. I think that at the end of the day, many of the items just listed are basically what you're going to call reasonable measures. From a legal perspective, you're going to talk about, like I said, with the antimicrobial mask, as indicated, that's a measure that you can, utilize to protect your employees, to make sure I think a mask is going to be a standard item, given certain social distancing, right? If you know, I'm sure Dr. Schnurr would say that you don't need a mask if you're driving in the car by yourself all day. You know, you're a long haul trucker. But that being said, you might need a mask for the 10 minutes that you go into the convenience store to pay for your gas. So I think that there's going to be practical applications from that. Do I think, you know, and I think legally, you know, if somebody doesn't wear their closed office space that they're in, I don't think that's a problem. You know, so there's going to be that training and that rule setting and saying what is reasonable given social distancing. And I think, you know, what you'll find, the community is going to come together over time and learn about what they need to do. I think some of the things that Josh is doing is great. Documenting things that are, hey, here's what my employee is saying. At very least, he's got the employees admitting that they don't have a problem when they're coming in, and that's step number one, right? You know, I think that's a good step, and I can tell you this to a lot of employers that I do talk to, Josh. You know, your steps that you're already taking are much greater and much more significant, and I think starting to fall towards those reasonable measures that you need to take. Now, I do think, like we talked about, reasonableness is a sliding standard. You know, what was reasonable in 1918 is not reasonable in 2020, right? Or vice versa. So, you know, I think as emerging technologies, emerging processes, procedures, things like programs offered by Dr. Schnurr, those types of things are going to put employers with different level of obligation, different level of duty, which hopefully will reduce their responsibility and offset that time that they're currently spending, you know, the 3 days a week on their task force or whatever, to be able to limit their liability and offset that liability. Even if you're doing all that, why not have that liability land on somebody else's shoulders versus yours? But I think the other things I think that need to be said, I think having meetings about it. You know, I commend Josh and his team for meeting 3 times a week. I think those are great as a small business attorney who's represented small businesses. Those are facts that would be significant to me in defending a COVID claim. Like, these are the steps we take. And really, that's what you're trying to do. As much as protect your workers, you also need to protect your business, right? Protecting your business protects your workers. And so to do that, you need to reduce that liability and mitigate that risk in taking reasonable measures. So, you know, I think those are some of the things that, you know, you're going to see over the next 6 to 12 months. Employers are going to have to find their way along that line of what's reasonable. You know, my perspective is, my recommendation to my clients is to say, you know, let's try to offset that liability either through technology, through guidance, through process and procedures, manuals that we have in place, posters, our own personal meetings, documentation of those things that we're doing, because documentation is always important when you're talking about risk mitigation and liability. If you don't document it, it doesn't happen. Or it didn't happen. So I think part of that, you know, needs to be considered when you're talking about how do I go about reopening my business. The thing I feel for all small businesses, all of my clients, folks like John said, they've got a business to run, right? You've got a business to run. You have clients that you need to service. You need to be your business about your business, not your business about running a healthcare business inside your business. And so, you know, I think the most effective companies are going to be built around how do I go about letting the business do their business while somebody else helps them manage that COVID liability risk. And I think that's going to be the marriage of where I see businesses that succeed is not getting, I don't want to say not caught up in COVID, because it's a very important topic and it's important to keep it safe, but not making it a main focus of, you could still run your business, operate, and provide those jobs for the people who you're going to be able to keep safe. So that's what I hope that we see in the future, you know, in the next 6 to 12 months, is businesses utilizing solutions, having process and procedures in place that allow them to get back to the actual work of their business.